The Dane and Derek Show is an uncensored, unfiltered podcast. Content warnings can be found in the episode description. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dane and Derek Show, a podcast where two nerdy friends keep in touch and shoot the shit. My name is Benig-Aiello. I'm a writer, director, and avid tabletop RPG player. And with me, as always, is my good friend, Dane.
Hey, I'm Dane, writer, podcaster, tabletop RPG lover, musician. Sometimes, I do a lot of things. Sometimes I wish I need to do less things someday, but
One of these
that day is not today.
because we're always working on too many things.
Always.
So this is a sort of follow-up to our episode we did a few months ago now called, I think, What We're Working On, where we talked about, or no. It was a talk and pitch. It was talk and pitch.
Yeah.
Where we pitched a couple of ideas. I pitched some shorts. You pitched some, I think, a game idea and like a novel idea. And then we both just somehow ended up on the topic of mechas. And we were like, ooh, a mecha mechanic radio show would be pretty cool, which we later broke on another episode.
Yeah.
Which you can go listen to.
Was the mecha one on that? Yeah. Because you were talking about. Yep, I remember.
I was talking about the Power Rangers mecha movie thing.
Yes.
And then you brought up something really interesting because we were talking about audio, doing like an audio play version of it.
Yep.
But today, we're just following up on that to see if we've done some of these things since that episode.
Yeah. So, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. Let's see. I haven't gotten any farther in the end of Go Hero. I have pitched it around to a few more people though, and the pitch is getting better. I just haven't finished the script. And then I think I pitched that moving movie about that I described as like it's the pop punk album you made in your basement for a couple of beers and dreams. Yeah. I have a couple pages of that, and I've been pitching that around to like friends to kind of gauge their idea. And I have a title, which is important to me. I fully believe that a title boils down the essence of the work you're making, which sounds ridiculous now that I say it out loud. But for me, it's super important to have a title. So I have that, but I don't have very many pages of it because while I did say I was going to do an audio version of the end of Go Hero, I haven't finished that. And instead, I've just been doing a lot of projects and a lot of work that is not any of the work I pitched on Talk and Pitch. So yeah. Dane, how are things going for you?
So I believe the two things I pitched was the diner thing, and then the next novel I wanted to be working on, which was about like slight environmentalism, but like high fantasy with a sorceress and various journals and such. So Diner Dreams, I did some serious work on. I released a few things, and then I hit a wall with it. Like I was like, what I thought was here was not here. And so I took my own advice about like letting things go, and that's okay. And I just sort of like kicked that out. And then just started writing and releasing poetry on the Substack instead, which has gone way better. It's great. I'm planning on releasing some fiction for it soon.
Ooh, okay, that explains it then. All right, I was wondering.
Yes.
But I was still like super like, oh, this is still really cool. Like I'm still here to read it. So
yeah, I was just like, I liked the idea, but it wasn't there. Like I tried it out, I gave it a run, and it wasn't there. And that's totally okay. And like the thing about the Substack is it's a place for me to have my writing. I'm not really trying to make it anything else. So it's totally okay that like for me, at least for the first few, I released some stuff and then like I was like, this isn't working. And then like kicked it to the curb and restarted, which is something like I'm really trying to be, really careful about right now, which is like with the podcast I have right now with Diceology, I would not I would be really nervous to start something like that that's open ended, and I wouldn't want to start something that I want to actually generate an audience for or really care about in that same
Mm,
way, um, unless I was way more committed to the idea, like it was already way more done, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Like with the novel I recently finished writing, at this point I'm really pleased with it, and I want to be doing edits on it and taking it further. But that's a finished thing, um, which is a very different place to be in. Uh, and
That's
as
great, by the
regards for
way.
this other novel idea, interestingly, I'm actually in roughly the same place with it as I was with Diner Dreams a couple months ago.
Uh,
Um, I have been outlining for it. I've been testing out little bits of fiction for uh, writing, like just to test out voices and stuff. And every time I come away from it less excited about the idea.
mm,
And I'm just like, and I think I'm done with it. Like writing a novel is a marathon, you know.
yeah.
It's emptying a sandbox with a teaspoon. It's not impossible. It's not even necessarily hard. A marathon is hard, but like um what's hard about it is the consistency required to do it.
Yeah.
Um and so I don't think I can do it on a lackluster idea. I think there are novelists out there, writers out there who could. They're faster writers than me. I don't know if they're better or not. That's a quality judgment, but like they are they have a skill I do not, which is, raw speed. Like do you we have a mutual friend named Dalton, and he is a spectacular writer just in general, but he's also fast. Like,
Hmm.
whoo boy, he is a fast writer. I think he could take an idea that he wasn't super in love with and bang out something, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe he wouldn't like it, maybe any number of things, but like he could do it in a way I could not. And so I'm setting it aside. Like this is literally something I've come to in the last couple days. Um,
Oh man.
and it's like a little sad, and like there's a part of me that's a little disappointed, but I wasn't happy with it. And I don't have the energy or time for projects I don't have some love for, you know?
Yeah. No, that is very fair, and I'm glad that you can be that honest with yourself and your work.
It's really hard. It's really hard. And, like I talked to some people about it before I did any real work on it. And even that left me feeling like I let a couple people down somehow. Like I was like, it's like, what the fuck is this? Like I told them about an idea I had, like I talked about it on this show, like I didn't sign any contract. I didn't,
Ugh.
like,
No, I know the feeling. It's like a very like you're like taken aback almost by
yeah,
people's visceral reactions to something that you hadn't even finished, let alone like fully formed, you know?
exactly. And
Eh,
so I'm
yeah.
like, I, I can't be, I can't be, I can't be bothered by doing
Yeah.
that anymore. So I've been like kind of working on letting that go and like slowly letting the idea go over the last, week or so. And
Nice.
really kind of realized that next couple of days. Cause like there are other ideas I have, right? Like that's the thing
Hmm.
that's I'm like sitting on, and I'm not really ready to talk about them yet. But like I have other ideas, and so it's not like letting this go suddenly means like, and what will I write? It's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go look at some other stuff. I was like, man, this might be cool to do after.
Right,
And I'll
yeah.
just do it now. Like, fuck it. Like,
The
who?
well is not dry.
No, not at all. Like,
You just don't want to be lugging up water for the moment.
yeah, not for this. Not for this thing that is like,
Yeah.
I'm looking up water to fill a horse's trough, and the horse is left. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
what the fuck? Like, what the fuck am
Yeah.
I doing there? Right? Like,
Right.
I'm wasting my time, everyone else's time. And on the one hand, I'm really pleased about this. And I actually also came to this episode being like, what am I, what am I going to talk about? Like, I don't really updates besides, I kind of quit on both the things I talked
I
about.
mean, that I think that's worth talking about because Like I also was in the same boat. I haven't had that much time since the last time we talked till now, you know. I've basically spent my time doing other things other than writing. I haven't had any I've had maybe one day where I sat down and seriously wrote, and I chose to work on a rewrite of a screenplay that I think I've talked about a little bit on the show, but it's a screenplay that's very close to me that I can't necessarily make right now, but I do want to make eventually. It's the Dinner at Lola's script. I've been really working on that rewrite, and I chose to put it towards that because, like you just said, right? Like if you're pulling water for a horse that's already left, what's the point? And it's not like a bad thing, you know. You just gotta wait until the next horse or something else comes by, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So like the place I'm at sort of like creatively right now is like I have this big project to edit. My partner Gracie and I actually started doing a fun thing just for us because we realized we hadn't done like a creative writing thing like together ever
Oh
in like the
yeah.
6 years. And so what we decided to do is like we picked 52 like prompts topics for poems, and then every week we write one.
Oh
Um,
whoa.
and she's doing them at random, and I'm doing them in order. At the end, we will have 104 poems. Uh, two of each topic has a pair of poems, our own perspectives on the same idea. Um,
Huh.
so like, I'm really enjoying doing that. To be fair, that's like once a week I sit down and I write that poem, and it's a really fun exercise because I have like a built-in, I have a built-in accountability mechanism where I'm like,
Yeah.
yep, not gonna let down my partner on the thing we decided and said we do together. Definitely
Yeah.
don't want to show up in a year being like, I don't have the poems. You
Yeah.
know, uh,
Yeah.
and because I also was like, I'm doing these in order. I can't skip around to all the ones I'm excited about prompt wise. Um, and uh, I just have to do them. So like I'm learning tricks on how to like generate some creativity. Like I hit one that she came up with that like the moment she put it down, I looked at it and I was like, oh no, like oh no. Um, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna find a form of poetry, like sonnets and stuff that are like very strict about like what makes them the thing they are.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's like, and I'm gonna do one of those. Um, because then I'm locked in. Like then I understand what I'm doing and something will come from that.
Mm.
Um, versus sometimes I'm just like, oh wow, I'm just gonna write free verse because it's like I've got it. So it's a really wonderful exercise, and we're like a month and a half into that. And then so I have the editing, I have that, and now I've just sort of like I've thrown these other projects out the window. So all I have to keep up on is like the Substack, which I also have like a backlog of poems that I've written and like a backlog of pieces of fiction that I've written over time,
Uh-huh.
where I can just be like, yep, and I didn't write anything this week, so that's just gonna slot something in there. Just um and then other than that, like I have wide open space to like really take a look at some stuff, and I'm kind of excited about that. Um but yeah, it's kind of a weird place to be in because I haven't been like diligently working that much lately.
Yeah, but that space that you just described, that space is super key to being able to kind of see how things are going to align, right?
Yeah.
Like when I think about like I think a lot about like back to this time last year where I was really only working on one screenplay and I was watching a lot of movies and I wasn't like, I just finished shooting a film and we were slowly going through post, so I didn't really have much to do,
Hmm.
but I was able to kind of understand like, oh, like maybe like these things I've been working on, like I was able to kind of see like where the things I was working on were aligning in a way that chronologically in what order to make them make sense,
Hmm.
which have now brought up to this point, which is like I'm making a short film, that is directly in a way influenced by a feature that I really want to make, and that's on purpose, right? Like I was able to make that connection to show that I'm capable of making work like that. And that's, I wouldn't have been able to figure that out if I hadn't had that space to kind of evaluate everything I wanted to do. And I think that the fact that you have that space, especially considering all the things you do, and like how I don't want to say structured you keep your life, but like how like you're able to manage your spaces of which you exist in, compared to me, where I'm not really able to do it as seemingly neat as you. It's nice to see that you have that kind of space to, like, I guess, decide what you want to invest the next, what you want to do next year, right?
Yeah, totally. And like you saying like, well, what was I about at like a year ago? And in thinking back, I was prepping for the novel I have finished right now. Um,
Boom, yeah,
like about this time, like I was like, okay, I really have this idea. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna go get materials to start doing some like major research, like all that stuff. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm kind of back there again. The change for me, actually, in speaking about those like spaces and places in which you are, um, the thing I am like acutely aware of is that if I get my way, this time next year, finals for my first semester of law school will be coming up.
hmm
Um, and that's a very different life to be living. um,
yeah, yeah. Being a student again.
being a student again, potentially moving, like all kinds of stuff is attached to that, right?
Yeah,
Um, and so like a lot of my life lately has been thinking about and around the concept of having far less time because I am actually engaged with the primary thing I do in my day.
yeah,
Um, you know, and considering that is important. It's like important to me to be thinking about. And so like it's this matter of like pretty consistently I've been like shifting my priorities around and like really taking a set look back, and also being like really conscious about things I'm taking on and leaving space open. And also, like I was saying, like making things finite is
yeah,
really important. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting place. Um, and so like I'm curious, are there ideas you're considering? Um, you know?
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of ideas I'm considering. Um, and I think it's one of those things where I haven't had the space to really sit down and sort of work through and try to figure out if it's worth pursuing yet, or trying to get them to a state of which I can then evaluate taking them to the next step, right? Like for
Mhm.
me, which would be making a movie. Um, but
Which is a
yeah,
huge
there's
investment.
yeah, it's a huge investment. Like the short that I'm working on right now, like that was a script I wrote 4 years ago that only in the last year did I ever reconsider making. And it took like, from like April or March even through now to get it done. So like it's it's a bit. And that's only for like 5 pages of screenplay material. Um Whereas like in that time span, I've done 2 podcasts and shot a pilot for a third, and I've become, I've been doing like live streams with an arts org that I volunteer with, and I'm somehow still trying to write like not just one feature, but 3 and a web series. It's like it's a lot. It's a lot of mental bandwidth. In
Hmm.
addition to the fact that something I was not prepared for was my shift in day job. You know,
Yeah.
my day job now doesn't take up a lot of physical bandwidth. It takes up a lot more mental capacity. So at the end of a workday, I'm more mentally exhausted than I am physically exhausted. And so I've noticed a change in, I have a desire to go out more because my brain's kind of spent by the end of the day. And going into next year, um, I want to make sure that I have time and space to not necessarily be working on something. And I think that the hard part for me is that I love basically everything I do. And so deciding what is going to stay and what is going to go and what's going to change is really difficult. Um, but to that end, right, like I think there's a few things I'm excited about, right? There's this short film that hopefully will be coming out in 2022. There's the second season of this show, which I think is fair to announce,
Yeah,
that I really love. You know, this is like a really safe space for me to not only hang out with you, but for me to not like think about anything else I have to do. It's a very nice space. It's a little pocket dimension.
it really
Um,
is.
and then I'm excited to see, based on how this short goes, it's going to lead me down a few different paths, I feel. And whatever path I end up choosing is going to decide whether or not I pursue this web series I've been cooking up or trying to pursue more feature based stuff, which is really exciting. Because I'm at a point where I'm starting to feel confident and competent and capable enough to do something slightly bigger
Hmm.
versus doing a lot of little things. Um, and so, and also, and then there's like, the last kind of remaining, like, there's a, there's a, there's a show that I'm making with my friend Justin that I'm really excited about, that we kind of locked in to, based on our bandwidth, we kind of redid the whole show format. And that's really exciting because now it's a lot easier to make. And two, you and I have been talking about stuff that we've been creating and thinking about. And
Hmm.
one particular property we came up with that we've referenced on the show a few times. And that, you know, project has been really interesting to me because, it's like sort of, it's in a lot of ways like a culmination of audio literacy that I've acquired over the last year. Uh,
Yeah, and it's been uh,
it's been a very
seven
long time.
years,
Yeah,
7 years
7
since the
years.
last time you and I really did something, like really did something together.
Yeah, because like we've
Other
worked
than this,
together. Yeah, like we've worked together, right? Like we've done things, but not sat down to create something original or fresh for the both of us.
yeah, and to be fair, it already feels so different. Like
Yeah,
you and I are talking about, like, okay, like what are we what are we actually doing? What's the timeline? Like all of these very different things. Then like last time we sat down for something like that, it was so much more slapdash and like it was the energy of all the free time of a summer vacation,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. It was like a lot of like, let's just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. And this time it's like we both have an idea of what we want. We both
Hmm.
know what we want to do. We both understand the premise we've locked ourselves into in a way. And
Yeah,
we're bringing, an additional 7 years of storytelling experience, which
right.
is really exciting. Like, I literally just had a conversation with someone today about this, about the idea of like, taking all this experience you've garnered and then bringing it back to something very familiar. Like,
Yeah,
working on a big movie and then making a really small movie, writing a really big novel and then working on a short story. It's like the same idea. And like, you know, um, I think I'm really curious what it's going to look like because I have no idea when we're going to have it ready, which is fine. I
hmm,
like that. And B, when we do start to get into that nitty gritty technical part, that's going to be so uniquely different from any of the other projects we've worked on that I'm so curious what's going to I have there's a curiosity that I have that I haven't had with like with a science fiction or fantasy property or idea in a long time that I have with this. And I'm really excited to be part of that world again.
Same. And I think I think something that I've been realizing is like I'm really trying to figure out what I want to be focusing on. Like I really want
Hmm.
to know like what do I if I'm going to have such a limited amounts of creative energy and time, like literal time, where do I want to put that energy? And what sort of things do I want to say with that energy and time? And something I've recently realized is like I think I know where I want like my fantasy energy to go, if that makes sense. Like my strict like high fantasy Tolkien
Yeah.
esque, all that stuff. Um, and it sounds really silly, but I don't actually feel that silly about it. Like, but I wanted to go to my tabletop games.
I
Um,
completely feel
like
that.
that is where I want that energy to live. Be not only because I love those games but the people. And it's going to be
Yeah.
so important to me to keep those connections and keep that time for
Hmm.
myself. And
Yeah.
so I don't want to dilute that energy in other places, and you're supposed to write like what you want to read or hear or see, or you're supposed to like make the art that you want for myself. Like the art I really want to like quote unquote put out there is not that, and it's not what's the word? I'm really struggling to find the exact words I'm looking for. But what I want to like novel wise, what I want to write are much more dreamy works than what I was trying to do with the novel idea I had.
Right.
I want to write these watercolor impressionist dream things. Like that's what I want to do.
Uh,
And that wasn't it. So I'm going to do it there. Right? And
yeah.
like to play out the fantasy like kill the monster stuff, then I'm gonna turn to games. I'm gonna turn to tabletop RPGs and do that. You know, um, and then like collaborative works. I'm gonna come here, and with the thing that you and I are talking about, um, like you said, I'm actually also pretty curious because um it's different, and I like this is an energy that I'm kind of unfamiliar with, or almost feel like I had forgotten in a sense.
Yeah.
um and also like here's the thing I haven't done in a long time. For example, I'm going to ask you to have I'm going to ask to have a role, if that makes sense, in a production.
Yeah.
That is a thing I have not done in a long time. Like this thing
Yep.
that you and I are doing right now, the Dane and Derek Show, that is not really like you're the producer of the show, but
Right. Yeah.
like there's no like the whole show is you and me, and you are the person who edits and does most of the scheduling and stuff, and I really appreciate that. But like that's we didn't sit down and be like, all right, you're going to be producer and editor, so that means your responsibilities are going to be X.
Right. Yeah.
Versus like what we're talking about now, where like especially to make it feasible with like time constraints and everything, we're we're gonna have to sit down and divvy up roles specifically, and like
Yeah.
like things like me like I like for one like I don't think I have time to be a voice on the show, for example, right? Like
Hmm.
um so like it's been such a long time since I've wanted to be a cog in a creative Rube Goldberg machine that makes something. Like when we made films in high school, one of the things we did better than basically any of our peers in the area around us was we actually did divvy out roles
Yes.
um, in a very kind of official way, Um, and I was your producer. That's what I
Hmm.
did. Um, Occasionally I'd sneak off to do some writing, and acting because that was also a thing. But like I didn't direct. I didn't. Um, I didn't do the writing. Like that was you. Anyways, producing was my my thing, and you did directing and writing, and you and our editor talked about editing, but you know, you shared some of those responsibilities, but we were divided up in certain ways. Like after I'd scheduled you in for stuff or gotten your like blocks of free time, you didn't handle scheduling anymore. I did,
Yeah.
right? And like that's it's been so long since I've done that because like noveling is not like that. Uh Diceology has not been like that. That's been very much a I spearheaded that by and large. Lots of help from the cast, but like they were really doing cast stuff, which was awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's very exciting for me to think about like, oh, I'm gonna have like responsibilities. I'm gonna have to take care of stuff and get it done on time and all this good stuff.
Yeah.
But there are things I will not do, and I can trust Derek and whoever else gets brought on to help to do their part. And that's a fantastic feeling. It's an
Yeah.
exciting feeling.
Oh yeah. Like, going from like, just you and I talking on a show to doing like an actual play with a few more people to now being like, oh, we could be casting people. We could have other people, assisting us with scheduling and writing or editing the show
Hmm.
to, there's so many more facets to it that it's interesting to see where we're going to get those touches of collaboration and creativity along the way. And yeah, it has been forever since you and I have done something like this. And I'm curious too, like, because we're in the early stages of talking about the show and talking
Right.
about like the story and the characters, but what happens once we start screenwriting? What happens
Exactly.
once we get to production? And that's like really exciting because, we both, pooling our networks together, there's some really incredible people we could be working with. And that's really cool. Like we could be doing like we have there's a lot of potential I see. And I think it's like there's a lot of potential to create something not only incredibly fun, but like really good, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely. And like peek behind the curtain, Derek and I have a I think we it's fair to call it a
Yeah.
production meeting coming up.
Yep.
And like for us, like I'm not 100% sure what we'll accomplish with that one. I have some ideas about what will come out of that, but like, you know, that will be the one that we're like that's most unclear, if that makes sense.
Yes.
About like who's doing what and what we need to what individually we need to accomplish, right? Like um and how much help we're going to need, right? Like for example, if you came in and you're like, okay, I could devote 1 day a month to this, or so, I don't know. But
Right.
like,
Yeah.
if you said
Exactly.
that and we were like really committed to getting it done, um, then I'd be like, okay, well, we definitely need like a third person to help spearhead this, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, whereas like so like I think we're gonna like it'll be very I'm very excited about this because I'm curious to know what roles need to be filled. Does that make sense? Like
Yes.
um
Like who else are we gonna bring into the wing?
yeah, and
Who
like
who else are we gonna bring into the mech? Wink, wink.
exactly. And obviously the big one will be cast, of course.
Yeah.
And we'll probably want to keep that on the smaller side overall, of course, but like um because that's always just a little bit better. I don't know. I don't know. This is a complete tangent, but like more and more, I'm feeling like giant casts are so hard to do well. You know?
Yeah.
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 Like I mentioned in I think the Avatar episode that I just finished watching She-Ra, like the new one, and like literally my biggest criticism of it was like the cast is too big. Like so many what could have been like really amazing plots kind of got the short end of the stick because
Yeah.
there are literally just so many characters.
Yeah.
And to be fair, with She-Ra in particular, like from the original to the modern one, like they cut the cast substantially because the original was an extended commercial for new action figures every week. But anyways, um, setting that aside real
Yeah.
fast. Yeah. So like, but what that means is that cast members become integral, right? Like if you like look at like Welcome to Night Vale, the voice of Cecil in that show is so important to that to the whole damn thing,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
because for I want to say like the first 20 episodes he's the only voice or something.
Yeah.
And I mean it wouldn't our project
Yeah.
isn't like that, but
Right. Well, like, to pull an example from a show that is probably more like ours, like Wolf 359 is like three people for the first season for the most
it's
part.
it's four, right? Because it's
Well, it's four characters, but it's three actors.
yeah. Because
Because the guy that voices Eiffel also voices the Doctor.
right.
Yeah, and it's like you would never guess, right? But
Very good work on that.
I know, but that's the thing, right? It's like, it's like, yeah, like there's so much power packed into that dynamic, right? And
Hmm.
it's so essential. Like, I think too, you're coming at it too with like significant more experience with podcasting and radio than me, but I'm bringing very much a like filmmaking, directorial kind of sense to it, which I think is interesting. Like we're kind of meshing two things we love in a medium that we both are enjoying, like enjoy our time in, right?
Yeah,
Like that I think is super interesting. And because like I've picked your brain for years about doing a audio drama, and early 2020, for the majority of 2020, whenever I would talk to you about, oh, I want to do a narrative podcast, I'd always pitch you things, right? And
hmm
none of those ideas ended up becoming anything that I wanted to spend time in. But ultimately, what did it lead to? It led to me realizing that we should just have a podcast. And then
yeah,
that opened up a whole nother door once I started doing this show, like that led to me doing an actual play, which led to me doing this half podcast, half movie show that I'm piloting, and which has now led to us working on the Mecha show,
yeah.
which
And
is pretty great.
it's very interesting to because like here's the funny thing. I'm thinking about all those times you pitch stuff to me. Typically, I remember not necessarily my criticism, but always the thing I would bring up to you to think about would be like, right, but how are you going to show that? Like so often you were like, it would boil down to be like, you're pitching me movies, awesome
Hmm.
movies, but like you're pitching me movies. Like you're trying to put a movie story in a audio box.
Yeah.
Um, and that doesn't usually work.
Right.
It usually like just simply because like for the same reason that if you listen back to most old radio dramas, like if you listen to like the Superman radio dramas from like the 30s and 40s, they sound very silly because it's also based off of a visual medium, which was comics. Whereas I'll use Welcome to Night Vale as a and Wolf 359, both are stories about audio,
Yes.
which is kind of the thing you need to think of is like your whatever story you tell through an whatever medium you choose, it needs to be for that medium, I believe.
Hmm.
um
Yeah.
which is like why I find that it rarely happens on the screen where I'm watching a film or a TV show where I'm like, this would have made a better book or something. I sometimes see some things where I'm like, oh, I think you maybe wanted a comic, or oh, you really wanted a video game or something, right?
Yeah.
Very often, I will start reading a book that I'm like, "Ugh, you just like YA often will do this in particular, where I'll be like, wow, you wanted to make a movie really bad,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't want to read that.
Hmm.
And that's been some of like some podcasts I've listened to where I'm like, oh, this is you wanted a TV show, and once in a while it still lands, but like Wolf 359 is it's about an audio log. It's the communications. It's the story of the communications officer.
Yeah.
looking through radio and audio waves making logs. Welcome to Night Vale is, at least it started out about a radio show, right? Like,
Yeah.
or Alice Isn't Dead is told through trucker CV radios, right? Like,
Right.
these things tend to work a little better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really excited to do this. You know what? Turns out this is what we've been working on.
Yeah.
We got
Really.
there.
Yeah. We've been tossing ideas for months, and honestly, like, I'm really excited to spend the next however long working on a creative project with you like
Same
this.
here.
It's been far too long, and I kind of feel like it's nice to come into something where we both have a it feels like we're on a very nice playing field, and there's a very nice playground that we can kind of work with here, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, and I'm excited to, like you were talking about, to work with you again after so much time not doing so,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
Like, y- you've delved so much farther into film and script writing, and I worked in radio for years,
Yeah.
and I've done tons of storytelling and writing and podcasting, and it's it's going to be interesting to see what we do. And that what's also kind of fun about this is that, like, I also know that you and I are not going to sink ourselves into a project that isn't working. You
Yeah.
know, like, we're talking about it now and we're excited about it right now, but like, we could get 2 months down the road, like, we could have put some time in and be like, okay, this isn't working. And we'll step back. And that doesn't mean we don't get to work together or anything, right?
Right.
Like, I remember in high school in particular, we forced through some projects, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
because like that's what we did. Because on the one hand, we were learning that sometimes you need to work through some of the pain, right? Like, but like,
Yeah.
you also need to make stuff, right? Like, we were surrounded by a lot of people who talked a big game about making things and then never did, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and and so we were so afraid of doing that we would sometimes force things through that maybe we really shouldn't have,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and now we're at a space where it's less about just creating something, because we've created probably hours upon hours of things now that we don't
Yes.
really need to make stuff to get better. We want to make stuff that we're proud of and that we want people to listen to and to derive some form of entertainment or value from, right? Like we want people to be entertained, and we want to entertain, and we want to make something fun for us. So
Hmm.
if we're not having fun, then we're probably not going to continue with it. But, I have a feeling, calling it right now, you're going to have a blast writing dialogue.
I Yeah, that's fair.
And knowing me, I'm going to have a fun time figuring out all of these fun, weird sound effects. And
Yeah,
we can actually talk about it off mic, but I actually might know a guy that might be good to bring on for sound effects in particular.
kick
Um,
ass.
yeah,
It's fun to hear.
but I think we're
we
well
are
over time.
we are well over time, yes. Very
Well,
overtime at this point, but I mean, not as overtime as our campaign episodes, so
yeah, no, yeah, and who knows? Perhaps the next two episodes we do, those could be a long pair of episodes, because those are going to be our last two episodes of the season, which is pretty wild.
that is pretty wild.
That we've done this for a year, man.
Oof.
52 episodes,
52.
and we've only missed 2 weeks, so like we did it.
We did it. Yep.
um, well, folks, that's it for this week. Expect a lot more things from our spheres as we go on, and we're very grateful to have you all along for the ride. You can see what movies I'm watching on Letterboxd at Derek-Aiello. And Dane, where can we find you and your work?
You can find me on danewrites.com. That's DANEWRITES.com. You'll find my writing on Substack. You'll find my podcast, Diceology. You'll find music that I've written on Bandcamp and my Twitter, which is mostly dead, but it exists, so it's there.
There we go. Alrighty. Have a good rest of your day, morning, evening, night, wherever you are, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Bye
We'll
bye.
talk to you soon.